I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. This episode we cover They Live, on the first, the last, the Nerdom, with Tom and Mike.
Whoa, that was like speed reading. I don't think you heard it, but it was very quick and fast. But in any case, what is all this? I'm Mike, and my co-host here is Tom, and
Yep.
we're back for another of our weekly main episodes. This one was really fun, and I was kind of waiting. I guess we were both kind of waiting to pull some of these fun ones out every once in a while. So that's why when we kind of go over and decide what we want to cover, we can do so with gusto. But in any case, this is the first, the last, the Nerdom with Tom and Mike here. I'm Mike, obviously, and I just wanted to take a few minutes here to pump our plug our show here, or our channel, excuse me. Boy, I was surprised by the take up for our last one, the Takashi Miike's bugging out terraformars.
It was. It kind of had a initial fire that it generated like 20, and then over the weekend it doubled that. So yeah, it's fun to see. Yeah, one of ours has finally got a landing back with the audience.
Absolutely, yeah, and of course, this whole thing we want to say, well, we even picked up an extra subscriber, so we want to send our heartfelt thank you to you out there who did that. And I actually wanted to say, I had come up with a little bit of a tagline, a little bit, and just the folks who are out there. Thank you so much for commenting, liking, subscribing, giving us likes, giving us views. We really do appreciate it. We're here. We're doing it for the love of the thing, and just the enjoyment, especially when we get to revisit treasures like this that we're about to get into. They Live, which is needs hardly no introduction. I think it's only grown bigger as time has gone on. I remember the very first time I saw it too, but we'll get into that in a minute. But remember, if you subscribe, you will always be in the first row for our videos and our takedowns. And I think that Tom and I want to start doing a little bit more nerding outs. That's our semi regular show where we cover something that we just want to kind of talk about or cover in general. It doesn't have to be necessarily a genre or media. Just some thoughts that we have, but we don't do it all too often. But we would like to get into there. And I don't think we're going to make my goal of 100 subscribers by the end of the year. But that's okay. That's okay. We're doing just fine. I never in a million years, I never thought that we would find 61 people who would like what we have to say, or just want to hang out and check out our content semi regularly. So we do appreciate that. Hey, what was your favorite? And I wanted to plug your video, your solo video on the Book of the Fallen. I know that you are coming up hard on finishing that, finishing the one you're on. Book 7, was it that you were on?
Yeah, I'm this much left. So yeah, doing this podcast under protest. I'm almost finished. So yeah, I'll I was planning on doing once I finish it, I'll probably post a video review of it, and I'll post it on all socials whenever I do that. So
awesome.
Most likely on Saturday. Give me some time to think about it. But today I came here to drink milk and kick ass, and I've just finished my milk. So
that's right. That's
a nod. That's a nod to the IT crowd who.
Okay.
One of the characters said that in one of the episodes in honor of the movie we're talking about, They Live.
Awesome. Yeah, and we just well, now that we're done plugging the show, I guess we can get into the main thing here. Yeah, so I had discovered this. I don't know. I discovered it sometime in my. I did not see this when it came out when I was a kid. I was not that cool. But I did see it years later. I think my early 20s is when I first saw it, if I'm being honest, which I am. But how about you? Like, I know you typically have a longer history with these things, and I wouldn't surprise me if that were the case. But what's your history and background with They Live and Roddy Piper and maybe some WWF? I definitely was a big wrestling fan when I was a kiddo, for sure. Hulk Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter. Yeah, all of those wonderful characters, larger than life characters.
Yeah. Yeah, I have. I was just looking at my. I've got sort of the Sith Lord outfit on and red light going, so I was just kind of admiring that. But no, yeah, I don't come from a wrestling background, and then I think if you're a true wrestling fan, you say wrestling instead of wrestling. So I think that's a proven case. But yeah, so any and all wrestling fans that come to the channel to watch this, I'm not a detractor of wrestling. I get the appeal because
Mm,
I think it's a similar appeal to what people go to comic books for those larger
absolutely.
than life
Yep.
kind of superhero type characters. I just never I remember watching as a child. My dad would watch wrestling occasionally, and I just didn't couldn't really get into it. Never
All
really
right.
understood the appeal.
Sure.
But yeah, like I said, I don't hate a lot of comic book fans are wrestling fans. So yeah,
There,
um,
that is
but yeah,
crossover. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, easy crossover. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Now I kind of after I kind of grew up and you get into other things, it kind of falls away for a little bit. But I definitely was when I was a little kid. I loved watching. The of course, you think it's real, and these characters that are larger than life. And it's no way before. This is way before The Rock, and John Cena and those types. They kind of crossed over and became an actor.
Yeah,
And
in
and
fact, Rodney Piper claims that this is the first one. John Carpenter was the first one to hire a wrestling person
I believe
as
it.
the main actor. Yeah,
Yep,
in a major motion picture as opposed
absolutely.
to, there he did some minor stuff before then. So yeah, he kind of got the ball rolling on this one. And then, in fact, I came to this not as a wrestling fan, but as a John Carpenter fan. I
Right.
went to see this movie opening weekend on to see it, and
Okay.
and I saw it with a packed crowd. It was a number one movie the week it came out, and everybody for whatever reason was excited about this movie. And then I was thinking in the back of my head, it's a John Carpenter movie. I don't know if regular audiences are really gonna be completely enamored with this. And in fact, the audience I saw it with absolutely hated it. They were
Oh, wow.
jeering it and just didn't understand the movie. And you have to understand, back then it was 1988 when it came out. I was in college. The whole kind of
What's this thing? Sorry.
political, yeah, the whole kind of political commentary type thing that it took at, and also back in the day, everybody wanted their movies straightforward. The normie audience wanted you to tell, if you're going to tell an action movie, it needed to be just an action movie, maybe with a couple of funny one-liners. It couldn't be satirical. This people didn't understand. They got angry with it because they didn't understand what it was trying to do.
Mm,
I understood quite well what it was trying to do. It was kind of doing political satire, but also it was trying to be a goofy action movie, where the lead character could stumble around
mm,
and and get things wrong. They didn't understand. They wanted a hero that they could get behind, or they came from the wrestling crowd where they wanted, the wrestler to show up and, be the big over the top wrestler that he is, where he is kind of over the top in the movie, but in a way that I don't think was satisfying to the most of the audience at the time. So it was number one the
mm.
first week, and by the second and third week, it was gone from the it was gone from the theaters. And
Interesting.
so Roddy Piper in the commentary to the movie kind of speculates, maybe, or no, I think it was Keith David that kind of speculated that maybe it was due to its political leanings, but I don't know. I think people just weren't ready for it. That's why it became a cult classic. That it has legs because there was something there, and also a lot of the reviews at the time were really lambasting it. People just didn't understand what it was trying to do.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had technical difficulties here. We lost our window. I'm going to pull us back into the chat view here, like while I fix that. But anyway, yeah, I could see that, like, where people would go into this and then they would be disappointed because it's not what their expectation is. Um,
Yeah.
but despite that, this was like very low budget, and John
And
Carpenter
mhm,
excellently
mhm.
handles that to like where you it ages pretty well. I'd say it holds up. Of course, it
Yeah.
wasn't a big it didn't make a big splash, but it certainly did as the years went on. Other that picked up fans and became just a no brainer classic
Yeah,
for
I mean
sure.
it's become a meme. People probably know the meme more than the actual movie at this point. The Obey, I think one of the graffiti people uses that for their graffiti now,
Oh
and it's
yeah, yeah.
totally in honor of the movie. But yeah, it's one of those things. Like especially I never got into punk music, but this was sort of my punk. It was like leaving this movie knowing that the whole audience didn't get it, but I did.
Hmm.
I felt like I was in sort of like the cool kids club, the people that understood this movie understood it, whereas the people that just didn't get it, they were squares, they just they just didn't quite get it. They didn't understand that sort of snarky sort of humor that kind of looking things askew, whereas nowadays it's a common thing. Everybody is sort of being ironic, and that humor's all over the place, so people
Right.
immediately understand this movie, immediately get it. But at the time that wasn't the case. That was not the way people viewed their media. They wanted it straightforward, to the point. And the fact that it was kind of lambasting, or kind of taking aim at that landscape. Everybody was at that time all in on Reagan and Reaganomics and everything. They didn't want to look at maybe the downside of it, with the homeless,
Hmm.
with all of the mental health facilities closing down, and all the mentally ill ending up on the streets and whatnot. That just wasn't what people wanted to look at. Everybody wanted to look away, and this movie, at the beginning of the movie, forces you to look at it. So
It
it was
does. It
not
does.
something that was, it did things that people didn't like, and they're not going to recommend it to their friends once they see it. So it got that initial bump, because I was looking at the numbers. It's cost 4 million to make, and I think IMDb said it made 13 million. So it
That's
did
right.
make.
So
Yeah, I kind of remember it as being kind of a bomb, but it actually, that first weekend or so, it, I guess, made its money. And you know, John Carpenter kind of rates his movie, because he looks at this favorably, and I guess it's because it's one of the handful of his movies that really did well for him financially. So yeah, that's cool. Also, like I was saying, I was in college. I was the little snarky, a little a little wise. So as a joke, on campus, on one of the bathrooms, I wrote on the wall, they live, we sleep. And just to see if anyone would notice. And my one of my buddies at the time in college, he come up to me in the comments, like, you know what? Someone wrote "They live, we sleep." He was big on the movie too. He was so kind of taken with that. And I just couldn't spoil it for him to say it was me. So I let that legend live on.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah. So if you're watching now, hey, it was me.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
Going back into this, this is basically told from that perspective, and I think some of the surprisingly, it kind of is timeless, because you're always going to have a underserved class of folks that are down and out. But in this movie, it's presumably to the extreme of, like, and it's been going on for a very long time, and it's getting to that point, to like where there is a rebellion, and you don't kind of you kind of see this guy. He's kind of like just a kind of everyman, I guess. That Roddy Piper plays as Nada, as his character, and it's kind of funny how his character, he didn't say all that much, You know, like you were calling out, the memes are far wider with that, but it's just interesting how it showcases that, and you're kind of like you kind of feel their pain, like
Yeah.
as you. It's very well written, and it's very you very quickly get to like the understanding of this world is very unbalanced, and and there's a lot of I didn't really take the social commentary as like too sharp, to be honest. It sets the
Right. Right.
scene, but holy shit, you want to talk about being timeless, and like what we see nowadays. I mean, absolutely. You know, you kind of see.
Yeah.
Good grief,
Well.
I'm making a mess
Yeah.
everywhere. Spilling my coffee.
But yeah, this is how you do it. I mean, you know, I think a lot of the social commentary in media now is sort of like kind of tries to hit you over the head with it. You know,
Shouldn't
either
you?
Trump, yeah, Trump is bad, Biden is bad. That's the message. That's all they're saying. Whatever. Whereas this movie does it right. It
Do very
we
poorly
weaves it.
nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, it weaves it into a science fiction story where the science fiction story is king. The story, the idea of the story is king, whereas the commentary sort of is interwoven into it, and you could read into it,
Right.
but it's not over the top. It's not like, dimensional crap that's just there to serve as a message, as opposed to telling a story. It's there to tell a story, and then if you get a message out of it, fine, but you don't have to take that message if you don't want to. And that's how you're supposed to do it. At least I think you're supposed to do it, where you're telling an interesting story. And I think it's the point of it is two-pronged. I think John Carpenter was taking aim at Reaganomics, but also he was taking aim at a media at the time, which nowadays we would tie social media onto it. It's he was overwhelmed with the commercialism, the buy nature of things, and
Consume.
consume, exactly, yeah. So those two things, the homeless situation and commercialization of everything, is present today. I mean, this like
Even
you
more
said,
so. Yeah.
this story is timeless. And to even hammer it home a little bit, that little section of LA that they used as the homeless village, where that section, well, when at the time that they did the commentary for
Mm.
this, John Carpenter and Rod Piper did the commentary on this. That section of LA was still in disrepair and was
Mm.
run down, and you could shoot that homeless village there today because it hasn't been
Oh,
developed. So yeah,
it
it's
would be even more dystopian. Even and it wouldn't really matter. You could find that scene in just about probably the top 25 largest American cities. You're gonna find that. You know, you're gonna find Skid Row, kind of down and out place that has that stuff. And
yeah.
it's more prominent in more fair weather states that have better weather. You're going to see that more and more. Even here in Missouri, you see panhandlers more. And I just remember, like, it just kind of, it's just funny how these things change over time, and how it has it hits at a different layer too. Like when you start to think about it, and you start to think about how it is, and how it goes. Like, very interesting. And of course, the '80s were no strangers to social commentary, light layered, very layered commentary from like Paul Verhoeven, and RoboCop and other films. So this is like kind of a thing that the '90s or the '80s did fairly well, I think, and that it for sure held up over time.
Yeah,
That it
yeah.
just like some of the other things, but I
Yeah,
like.
even here we have occasional homeless people that will show up at the night, and we'll take a drink from our hose. So yeah, it's everywhere.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's only going to increase as time goes
Mhm.
on, obviously. But
Yep.
but
And San Francisco has the poop map,
I
that
saw
where
that.
the
I heard
biggest
about that.
concentration of poop in the area because of the homeless.
Yep, yeah. And I remember when the iPhone came out, it didn't have an app store when it first came out. It was a couple years later it came out. But there's an app for everything. Yeah, there literally is an app for everything. Like, a poop map for like where to avoid, I guess, in San Francisco. God, ugh, good grief. But like a friend
But
says, everyone's got problems.
Right. And I guess we made it this far and we haven't even said what the movie's about. It's about the character, I think John Nada, although I think he's just listed as Nada in the movie credits. Nada, and he's down on his luck. He's living in a homeless shelter, a homeless village, and he stumbles upon this group of people that looks to be up to nefarious activity, maybe making drugs. Who knows what's going on?
Yeah, he senses something isn't going on, or something extra is going on, and he's just kind of like, he kind of plays like the average John Q. Public that's down on his luck, but still believes in doing the right thing, trying honest pay, honest work, that kind of thing. And it's very believable how he does. He doesn't overact at all, which is great. Which some wrestlers to actors do very poorly in that, finer points of acting. Some are better than others. Not really giving commentary on any specific one, but of course nowadays it's kind of like it's kind of old hat at this point. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, so like you were saying, sci-fi, and of course it's science fiction. I immediately, when I started watching it, I was like, what is this? And then you kind of get into it, and then you start to see other aspects of the world building that they do. So he sees that there's something not quite right going on, and obviously, presumably, he's been to probably dozens of these cities bouncing around, and something I didn't quite get the city that they're in per se. I'm sure I wasn't as sharp to get that, but it kind of doesn't matter. It's just kind of big metropolitan area, and he goes. But fill us in more about his journey to become awake, so to speak. Not woke, awakened, so to speak. Yeah. Different terminology. Good grief across the ways. Of course, in 20 years, nobody's going to know what the hell woke means or anti-woke means. It's going to be another blip on the radar. But yeah, take us through that.
Yeah,
if you could, kind
right.
Sir.
Yes, I will. But yeah, so so he finds these glasses that these guys have been making, and it reveals that a good portion of the population are aliens, and that all of our media has these subliminal messages embedded in them, and so it kind of breaks his brain, and he goes on a kind of a rampage against these aliens, and he wants everybody to find out about it, and he goes to his fellow homeless mate, played by Keith David, and Keith. It's a lot of people want to be knowingly blind to things, and he runs into that physically with the Keith David character, and they have a bit of a fight in the alley about it, but he comes around, and they join forces to go up against the aliens to expose them to the world. And there's there's a famous sort of fight scene between the two of them that is also famously reenacted on South Park on the episode Cripple Fight. Did you get a chance to watch that?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes too as a little Easter egg. So there's aliens out there. They're already in the human population. Somehow, some way, they can camouflage themselves and look like us. But when you put these special glasses on, I wrote down the name of them.
Yeah, they're the Hoffman glasses.
Hoffman. Yep. Yeah. And any good science fiction always has some kind of technobabble kind of sort of thing. Like, and this is no stranger to that. For that effect, which is awesome.
Yeah, and the inventor of the Hoffman sunglasses is Albert Hoffman, who was also the creator of LSD. So that kind of ties into the whole glasses thing, opening your mind, right? Sort of thing. That there's a whole nother layer to it. But yeah, the cool thing is, I do have the physical media, the Blu-ray of They Live, put out by a special collector's edition, put out by Shout Factory. I think it's still available at Shout Factory, but it has a really good commentary track between Roddy Piper and John Carpenter. John Carpenter, it really depends on who he does his commentary with, on whether or not it's entertaining. The one that he did with Kurt Russell on The Thing was really entertaining. The one that they did on Prince of Darkness, he did with his, not Prince of Darkness, but At the Mouth of Madness, he did with the cinematographer, and all they did, at least the first 10 minutes, and I had to shut it off, was talk about the lighting and what lights he used and all this. Whereas, with Roddy Piper, you're going to have a good time with him. He's going to be talking crazy stuff and having a good time, and he definitely does in this commentary. So if you're a fan of Roddy, the late Roddy, definitely check this out. I believe it's still available on Shout Factory, and he's and you were talking about how good actor he is. He did try his best on this movie, and as the movie went on, he would point out the times when he thought his acting wasn't up to snuff, and John Carpenter's like, no, you did good, and then but as a professional, and he treated this as a professional gig. He was critical at those times where he thought he could have done a little bit better on it. So it was kind of interesting to see that.
To have a self-aware actor like that, who is or somebody who's coming into the new world of acting with kind of those fresh eyes, and he definitely is not a young man by the time he hits this part of his career. And sadly, like you were saying, he passed away in 2015. Boy, it really sucks to not have him around anymore, but we always have these treasures like this to go back and watch. But he stands out. He's just such a strong lead, and you believe this story very quickly. And I love that they take their time getting there, and you are along for the ride. And this is no different. They've done this kind of genre world building before, like one that comes to mind is Invasion of the Body Snatchers. One of those kind of concepts of like there are aliens among us and they're slowly but surely taking over. But yeah, I enjoyed his, and I also enjoyed Keith David in this as well, like, which turns out to be kind of like his buddy. They're kind of like very standoffish right off the bat, like like they're kind of like, well, I guess we're kind of walking the same way or whatever. I guess so. But they're definitely not fast friends. That's for sure. They're kind of two strangers wandering, and they just happen to be together at the start of it. But by the end of it, it completely turns around.
And to think about it, during this time, they had a bunch of those cop buddy movies where you had the white guy and the black guy. They get together. They immediately bond and become friends, and so this kind of plays with this as well. Plays with your expectations. They'll be immediate friends, but no, they have this protracted fight scene. This very vicious, very real feeling fight scene between each other, and it was in the original script. It was only going to be 20 seconds long. They mapped it out to 5 minutes, and they were Keith David and Roddy rehearsed it over and over, and they brought it to John Carpenter, and John Carpenter's like, we got to have the whole thing in there, and they said it was very real except for like the crotch shots and but yeah, it was very physical and real, and I think that realness really kind of portrays it. I mean, in regular fights, no one ever gets dirty in the movie, whereas in this movie they get physically dirty and bloody, and that you could feel it. You could really feel it, and that's why Trey and Matt did that with South Park. I mean, they took the most real fight scene they could and had their two cripple characters do that fight, and it's very visceral and real in that sense too. And it transcends all type of media where you could adapt it and you could feel it throughout the thing. And one other thing, John Carpenter wrote the script based off of a short story by Ray Nelson called, I think it's 8 o'clock. Oh,
Okay.
I forget the full name, but it's a short story that also got adapted into uh, 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 a comic. But it's what it's based off of, and then the original story, the guy starts to see the aliens after being hypnotized, and the hypnotism went bad, so he saw all these aliens. But John Carpenter wanted to kind of modernize it a little bit. He wrote the script. He did do it under a pen name. He wrote it under the name Frank Armitage, I believe it is,
Okay. Very
which
cool.
is pays tribute to Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft, because one of his stories, I think Dunwich Horror, has a character named Henry Armitage. And John Carpenter, as we know, is a big H.P. Lovecraft fan. He made At the Mouth of Madness in honor of Lovecraft's work. So yeah, uh, there's my little. Oh, and also, I was going to point out, there's a we did I think it was either Nerding Out or one of our old shows where we talked about a bunch of stuff. We talked about Bomber Guy. He had like a thing on the origins of the word oof, that
Mm,
sound effect. He recently did a big, I think 3 hours or 4 hour documentary on plagiarism.
interesting.
And just to let you guys know, all of the stuff that we talk about here is off the cuff. He talks about this one creator that just cobbles together his whole channel with various articles and whatnot, and just reads them. We do our main sources are, I usually get my stuff from commentaries,
Right.
from IMDb, Wikipedia. There's no there's no hidden agenda here. We're not reading that stuff off of there. It's just we read it and then kind of translate it in our own words to you guys.
Yeah,
So
I think there's a definite, like, if we were to like and I have in times past, I will absolutely watch a commentary for another perspective on films or things that we've seen or watched, just to kind of get the idea flowing. But for the most part, and again, we are very we are not hardcore critics here. And that's not what we hold down. As I always maintain, I think Thomas is a much better lens for that. And I think I think that's correct with what our audience that shows up. I think that they value your takedown of some things. I think I do an okay job, but for the most part, it's too hard, too much work to just kind of just copy and paste from somebody else and go in it.
right.
I mean, and plus, by the time we get to it, how many reviews and umpteen million takedowns are done for some of these, especially the bigger ones. But this one, and I get my source, like I'll use Chat GPT just for a little, correlate all the little bits and pieces here, like all the facts. Facts are universal. These things are not a big deal. Sometimes it can strike out on its factualness, but for the most part, it nails it, and even has aspects that I found, or just general search engines, or like we like to use Just Watch and IMDb, obviously, for these things. Wikipedia here or there, but and a lot of your sources comes directly from the actual media itself, anyway. From, like you were mentioning, the commentary therein. But this does an excellent way. It kind of sets up. It's like it's funny because, like, when he puts these glasses on, when he sees his eyes are open and he sees like all this, he's like, "What the hell?" And I believe the first time he actually does it, he's at a newspaper stand, which is a throwback to another era, anyway. But he's kind of like just dumbfounded by this whole world that's out there, and he even sees like. We're even talking like devices that are out there, like that you can't see. Somehow they're invisible to the. Of course, it's like a mass. Some kind of. They don't really go into the technical details of it. You don't really need to, but it's just kind of fascinating. Again, in any kind of good world building or science fiction or horror, and John Carpenter is a master of blending kind of different aspects and layering it up as you buy into the movie. But he's masterful at doing that, especially with any budget. Like, sorely lacking with films that have 100 times the budget that this movie had, that can't even nail the commentary or the satire down. Whereas this does all of that. It does commentary on the difference between class. It does commentary on the hero superhero trope. It does that justice. It does it all very well. Like, whereas nowadays, I think it's probably gonna be another 5. I feel like it's gonna be quite a few years before we kind of get out of this kind of, Quentin Tarantino kind of, he put his thumb or his finger on the pulse of modern movie making, and his critique is that movies don't really take chances anymore like they used to. That they're kind of buttoned down and buttoned up and a little bit more, maybe they have a lot of gloves and bubble wrap on them. I'll put it that way. For some genres and whatnot, there are some that stand out, like Bones and all. But those are art house films, and you really have to go look and search for good movies that tell a unique tale or something like that. Although we kind of, I think we had a little bit of a mixed bag with Bones and all, to kind of compare it to this one, but two vastly different movies. But
both taking aim at Reagan era.
That's true.
Reagan era world. You were
Right.
talking about how some of the descriptions from Bones and all was taking aim at Reagan and the Reagan era,
But
Reaganomics and whatnot. But yeah,
it does it in a way that isn't like, it isn't beating you over the head with it, like other modern films. I will give it that for sure. It doesn't really pull it out in the third act, I think, is what we were saying. But
right. Yeah, it's more of a backdrop of what's going on as opposed to front and center like this movie. It doesn't, it doesn't. Reagan isn't. I think he's maybe mentioned a little bit in the movie, but yeah, he's not like the focal point of the movie. But yeah, it's implied. To get back to the when Roddy, John Nada, first is exposed to the alien world, the guy who's working that newsstand, that gentleman, was a homeless person. They commented on in the commentary. John Carpenter used a lot of homeless people in the movie, and he wanted to make sure that they got fed and paid, and he wanted to do as much as he could for the homeless community, since he was making a movie about them. To a greater extent, he wanted to make sure he paid it forward and did right by them. So yeah, he did. It's a lot of the homeless people you see in the movie are real homeless people, that were taken care of, at least during the filming of the movie. So that's a good thing that he did.
that's cool.
And then and also, since this is shot in LA, I guess it was a easy commute for a lot of people, a lot of the actors in it. But yeah, there's a scene where I think the police are driving through to the female lead's house after her and Roddy had a little bit of a kerfuffle. But yeah, the police,
her, right.
So the police are shooting down the street, and John Carpenter goes, "Oh, that's where I live," and Roddy goes, "You might not want to say that. I mean, I've had some stalkers, so yeah." I guess John doesn't have to worry too much about that.
Probably not.
And,
what they call the modern day version of doxing, I guess, is as it were.
Yeah, and one of the guys, I forget his name, John something. He's the one that he's a kind of a skinny guy, and he plays almost all the aliens in the movie. So yeah. Also, there's a scene towards the end when a lot of the aliens are revealed on TV, and it was perfect opportunity for John Carpenter to take a snipe at Siskel and Ebert, who traditionally didn't like his movies. It's revealed they're talking about a movie and talking about movie violence, and refer to John Romero and John Carpenter by name, and those stand-ins for Siskel and Ebert are both aliens. So I think that's his sort of a kind of a funny, kind of light kind of jab at the two reviewers.
That's funny. Yeah, this definitely it. You talk about, and you have even seen kind of different, not direct political campaigns, but you have definitely have this messaging that was in the movie so strongly, and very black and white, literally black and white, as you're going through this. They want people to be in this mode of obey. Like this is kind of like it's made its way through the subconsciousness, and definitely been a cultural touchstone. And it only serves as more of a. This is why this kind of stuff doesn't die. It just kind of keeps going on and living. It has so many aspects of it that people can. And I guess I was wrong, completely wrong. I didn't pay attention to the city. It was Los Angeles there because there was a backdrop there, Los Angeles Athletic Club. But it really doesn't matter. Like the name of the city doesn't really matter per se. It's just this is kind of like where our hero lands, and it kind of becomes I mean, from get-go, he is rolling right into the rebellion, I guess is what you call it, or and he has no chance to rest through this whole thing. And of course, we won't spoil how it goes because you're gonna want to see this. But yeah, you see these ugly aliens that are just they're not human, and they really take over. And the graffiti too was also prominently a feature kind of throughout this film as a backdrop, which
and I was so moved by the graffiti. I did some graffiti myself at the college campus. It was inspired to break the law, but
breaking the
law. But yeah, both Roddy and John Carpenter, unsurprisingly, are anti-authority. Roddy in his commentary also pointed out that for a time he was homeless as well, and the raid on the homeless shelter, the homeless village where the police came in and shut it down at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah,
he said that it was very kind of emotionally traumatic for him because he had been through something similar. So, and it was so realistic to him that it brought back memories. So yeah, this is a very emotional movie for him, and it's kind of interesting because John Carpenter originally was going to have Kurt Russell be the guy in the movie, but he had done so many movies with Kurt Russell. He's like, well, probably should get somebody else. And so, yeah, and then he kind of was wanting to get someone recognizable. So he was going to get a big celebrity like Patrick Swayze or Tom Cruise or someone like that. But obviously probably out of his price range.
Right.
So he went with Roddy Piper, and Vince McMahon really didn't want Roddy to do it, and Roddy had to actually quit the WWF to make this movie.
I read that. There's a little bit of a back and forth there with them doing that. Of course, you go in, and again, this kind of like before that crossover was so popular, and prominent nowadays. This was like the first time, like which nowadays like it's just funny how that works. Vince McMahon is still around.
Yeah, and the fact that he just basically wanted complete control over these people, and it's like, well, I could do. I'm a grown up. I can make a movie if I want. So yeah, but yeah, it's real fascinating, and also I like a lot of great actors like Keith David. This is his second movie with John Carpenter. They also did The Thing together, which he did quite a good job on as well with Kurt Russell.
He has quite a few good movies too that we've at some point or another you've ran into something. I don't want to see that because it's going to strike us. But anyway, sorry. Yeah. And Rick and Morty, of course. He plays the president. In that, and does a very good job. He's a very iconic voice. He's no stranger to any of these things. He's always been in high demand. It looks like.
Yeah, and he's in Saints Row 3, which is also another throwback or a nod to this movie. His role in it is in the plot line of that game is similar to the movie. There is an alien invasion in the LA-esque Saints Row. So yeah, there's this movie's had an impact throughout media, even if you're not aware of it. it's there. So yeah, it's one of those movies that kind of digs into your brain and kind of stays there and inspires you later on. Yeah, this movie's really definitely stayed with me. And also, I have to say that the Roddy character, his sort of anti-hero kind of vibe, kind of over the top, kind of funny. It really reminded me at the time, and still does, to Bruce Campbell's portrayal of in the Evil Dead movies.
Mm.
It's sort of like that kind of over the top, kind of silly superhero kind of character that's a kind of a larger than life superhero, but makes mistakes, does stupid stuff that that kind of wears his heart on his sleeve. And there's like a scene in the movie where in the I think of the flower shop, where Roddy is kind of going off on this older lady being
Right.
an alien,
Right.
and he ends up tripping over the flowers, and it just kind of shows you that he's not not the hero, the flawless hero that
No.
was big during that day. And again, that kind of, again, people weren't up for that at that time.
Right.
Which really, this movie and a lot of other movies that kind of push that kind of cynical, that kind of sarcastic side to things, that's very common nowadays. It was very, very against the grain at that time. And this movie and a lot of other movies were sort of cutting edge and was kind of pushing forth this narrative that was very unique and new at the time, for big blockbuster movies. So it was making steps that, today you look back on this movie and you'll enjoy it for what it does, and being kind of quirky and whatnot. But yeah, this movie was one of those. I would say that's why I labeled our thumbnail masterpiece, because its ability to kind of have that sarcastic slant to things, and kind of examine it, is one of those front runners of those type movies, that kind of that whole genesis of us having more of a sarcastic view of the world. This is one of those movies that kind of made it more acceptable, and kind of put the foot forward towards that kind of that type of cinema and storytelling.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there, there is, and it even has some early aspects of like drone, kind of surveillance, kind of very lightly throughout, but essentially there's some kind of it steps. It definitely it creates big shoes for, even like I said, you have movies that are produced like 100 times the budget that don't even hit half of what this does. It didn't even hit a quarter of what it is, and they only grow kind of with time, obviously, and that can only come with a good the good directors have the amazing ability to take what's in their mind's eye and put it on the screen in a very special way, and doubly so, especially when they have to communicate that through to the actors, to kind of communicate that, and then have the actors kind of, when it links up like this with Roddy Piper and Keith David, and even the we didn't really talk about Meg Foster either, but she's not necessarily a major part of the movie, but she's probably a good. I mean, she is part of the story structure for sure, but mainly we're following behind Roddy and his kind of adventure, this adventure that's kind of he finds himself into, and it just kind of goes from there. And they figure things out pretty quickly. They're a very good duo.
Yeah. If you look at them, John Carpenter has sort of like an archetypal look for his hero and his heroine. His hero very much
excuse me,
in the style of Kurt Russell. Roddy Piper, he fits that mold. He's kind of got that sarcastic kind of slant to him, and you can see the parallels between them. And then his female characters, his female heroines, do have similar qualities. Meg Foster, very much reminiscent of Jamie Lee Curtis and Adrienne Barbeau. They kind of have all that. They all kind of have a look to them and kind of a personality to them that's similar.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, this one goes. I was going to say there. Aside from the themes, the sorry, I have to find my place in my notes here that I wanted to call out. Excuse me. Yeah, definitely in the 80s. There is, and I think this also works too because it plays a little bit with nostalgia, a little bit. Like because everybody says, "Oh, well, back in my day, the things were easier, simpler, kind of, sort of, uh, type critique. Whereas like, well, we're living in that era anymore, and things are always moving along. But subliminal messaging, all of that, and oh yeah, I was gonna say the fight scene is famous in this movie because obviously of the physicality that Roddy Piper can bring, not just as acting, but also kind of there's in wrestling you have to be a little bit of an actor to perform like that for that. Obviously, it's very over the top. It's a different genre, so to speak, than say film or TV, but it's still acting nonetheless. It's a little bit different, and you can always fall into rabbit holes with that. But the reason why they're fighting is because he wants Nada wants Keith David's character to put the glasses on, and of course Keith David doesn't want. He just wants to. He didn't want anything to do with anybody. He's not trying to get in anybody's business. He just wants to move on down the road, and he didn't care. He's got a family to take care of, and that's all he cares. That's all he's after. He's just looking after that. But the fight scene kind of forces. Finally, he kind of submits to this, but not easily. The other thing too that I noticed is like I don't think they actually show a pair of these glasses getting smashed. But boy, there's a little bit of anxiety all throughout the film with all the things that they're doing. It's like, how do they not? How do they not break these damn things? As it goes, but they also kind of have a like you were saying, the LSD kind of the Hoffman drug thing reference there. They are a drug essentially. There is a trade-off when you wear these glasses to that. Now, I guess you can adapt as time goes on, I guess, as it were. But initially, it's a hell of a rough trip. And you kind of you see in a very very about 15 minutes or so, you see Roddy's character go from cops when the cops are kind of track him down when he's just trying to beat feet and get out of Dodge. And he also helps like a random person you don't see again later in the film too, which is kind of cool. Like so he has that natural instinct to like us versus them kind of thing going on, and they roll out of there, and then from that scene he's robbing a bank, not really robbing a bank, but he kind of just gets into this flow and then kidnaps. His rap sheet goes pretty quick.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, his brain kind of breaks at that point when he realizes what's going on. And
shit, this is not reality. Doesn't mean nothing that I know is up or down anymore. It's completely lost.
Yeah, and Keith David plays the part of us. We would just want to live our life. We don't want to be caught up into the to nonsense and whatnot. And this is kind of a precursor to the Matrix, with the red pill and whatnot. You got the glasses instead of the pills, but yeah, so that's instead of making the choice, Roddy John Nada forces it upon the Keith David character, but yeah, it's very much that sort of waking up and seeing things, the whole with the Hoffman glasses and LSD, opening your mind and seeing things for what they are. It's a fascinating idea. If it could be as simple as putting on glasses and seeing all the crazy influences you have, especially nowadays. Like you said, it's this movie is this movie was very forward thinking and sort of seeing things at the very beginning, the genesis of them. And at the time, everybody knew that those commercials, those beer commercials with the scantily clad women.
Right.
That they're selling a lifestyle, a unrealistic lifestyle,
Right.
and trying to get you to buy in on this idea. And we were all cynical. We all knew what was going on, but we're like, oh well, it's harmless. And even today, where it's like, oh well, they're tracking you on your phone. Whatever.
Mm.
So the whole malaise, the whole Keith David fighting fighting from seeing what's going on. We're doing that to this day, saying,
Yep.
"Oh, it's not a big deal. Move along. Nothing to see here."
Yeah.
Kind of mentality.
Yeah, I think, and one thing that this movie does in its commentary in this world and on this world is that there are a whole bunch of people that don't even care. They don't even, like you were saying, like with the phone thing nowadays, like where it's just like, I have I'll tell you about a joke offline, but it's not really family. We try to keep it a little bit family friendly here, aside from a few cuss words here or there, but I won't. I'll tell you offline. But for the most part, I think the shocking
and
thing,
for Patreon members, no, we don't have Patreon.
Well, maybe one day, maybe one day we might. But and boy, that would up our game quite a bit to be under the gun of making money, or at least to do that. But I think one of the more shocking aspects, if this were like made today, if they even could, with any decency or any quality, I should say, would be that I think that they would probably focus more on the aspect of like the people would just accept it. They wouldn't even care. They wouldn't even need, even if they had the glasses, they wouldn't care. They would just kind of like, okay, like, and you kind of get that a little bit because there is a human traitor, a collaborator, so to speak. Like when they kind of get down into, I guess, their subterranean interconnected headquarters, I guess. I don't know how to explain it than that, but like they make their way into this very rapidly, and they run into this dude, this kind of good old boy rich dude, and he's like he's showing them the tour, and as he doesn't realize that they're actually there. They're not there for being there for anything other than like wrecking havoc. But he kind of takes him in stride, and at first right away he's trying to convince them toward the end of like, hey man, it's cool, like didn't you like, you just got my third house, like what do you care, like what why not not accept everything that they're doing. But of course, presumably this alien race, which represents the elites, so to speak, they're only here, they've done this probably for forever, and they're a parasite, and then they're just there to basically essentially just milk the earth or humanity for its resources, and whether that resources be the planet or they actually be humans themselves, which it seems to be humans that they feed off of, some aspect of that, which is it doesn't really go too long into it, but it's implied,
Right.
but which I love, but for the world building.
It doesn't get too into itself. There's not like a huge information dump in the movie. The big information dump is the glasses. So it's very fast paced. It's an hour and a half long. It's not a bloated two and a half hour movie of today's standards. But yeah, it's an in and out. Tells what it wants to say, and you put in as much as you want into the movie, or as little. Another thing about the being able to make the movie look like a blockbuster, but spend less on it. One of the more expensive things that they spent on was right at the beginning of the movie, when there's a train that passes, and you see Roddy Piper's character. As the train goes away, he walks towards the camera. That being able to rent that train to go by was $12,000, and they messed it up the first time, so they had to do it a second time. So yeah, it was. You could tell by their commentary. It still kind of pains John Carpenter that money they had to spend on it it still kind of pains him to this day. But yeah, it's one of those things where they put the money where it needed to be, and also when he first gets the glasses, he's at the like you said, the little newsstand. But the
Mm-hmm.
first time he actually sees something is looking up on the building with the billboard,
Right.
and that in where it said what was it, obey or consume. He
Yeah,
looks
something like
up
that.
and sees it, and he takes his glasses off and he looks at it, the normal billboard, and then puts it back, and he jumps back and forth. Those are matte paintings. Though obviously it wasn't a real build. It wasn't a real building. Wasn't a real billboard. It was matte paintings, and you can't tell. I mean, it looks like
Mm-mm.
a building with a billboard. So,
Yep.
yeah.
It holds up
For
very
what?
well
Yeah,
even today. Yep.
yeah. The special effects that they do work quite well. He knew that the alien mask and whatnot was kind of goofy looking a little bit. As long as you didn't spend too much time on them, it was still effective. That whole look of the alien is used as a meme to this day, and I think it's that
Mm-hmm.
combination of kind of uncanny valley, kind of creepy, but also not creepy enough to really creep you out. It's kind of humorous in a little bit. It's that kind of rides the line of disturbing and funny in a way that really works. So yeah, so they were able to use their budget to their benefit and make it look good. Even and also that applies to John Carpenter's directing. A lot of the directors that I like are very stylish, like David Lynch or other people where their mark as a director's very visible, from frame to frame.
Right.
Whereas John Carpenter is more of a kind of working man's director. He doesn't get in the way of the actors. He doesn't. He lets them act. Lets the story tell the story. There's no flashy editing. There's no flashy camera angles. He knows what he's doing. He does it extremely well. He does it in a way that is not confusing. He knows how to tell the story. So yeah, it's very very well directed, but it's not the flashy sort of thing I usually tend to lean towards. But this does it very very well.
Yeah,
The
it
way
does
he
it.
he directs.
Like, I agree with you. It is a masterpiece. It does it so classically too. And I guess I
Hmm.
want to reform my comments on because you do go in and you realize that they're at the very height, the apex of the movie. And again, we won't spoil it. But there, I guess I was incorrect. There are this movie does show, I guess, a fair share of collaborators, so to speak, like we're humans that are actively helping these these they're counter agents. We encounter one that tends to be the doom of some of the main characters here. But ultimately, this thing goes all the way through, and our hero, does make a significant change. Of course, it drops you off there, and then it's kind of like, what happens
Hmm.
next? Well, then you don't need the glasses essentially, and then what happens next, which is very fascinating. And again, one of the pitfalls for modern movies is more consumerism. They want to see, they would probably take this out, and they'd if this had been made maybe a few years later, or had got greenlit, which it would be a completely different movie, maybe even different people around it. Who knows? But they would have just made this. They would have just driven this to the ground. Where this is it's just the one cut. That's it. We don't need a prequel. We don't need a sequel. It's defining enough as it is. Like there's just so much material that it covers, that does
Well,
it very
and
well.
I don't know if it would be made today,
Not
because
the way it was,
yeah,
not the way that
well,
we, not the way that it was taken up. It would be made with. I think it would be probably made a little bit more on a different axis that would be a little bit more political speaking, per se. Maybe I don't know. Who knows? But
yeah, and then probably they'd push away from the consumerism aspect of it, because I was thinking that sort of mid-tier budget movie. It's not super cheap, not super expensive to make, sort of in the middle somewhere.
mhm.
Something like Netflix would maybe make this, but they wouldn't want you to do the whole the Netflix is sort of kind of has that sort of, I don't know, it would be very the movie would probably want to make fun of Netflix and those type of streaming services as well, with the whole
sure.
thing, and you know, it'd be kind of harder to make in the sense that they would want to be, you know, poked the way that they probably would be in the movie like this. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's a smaller studio that produced this movie, and John Carpenter had final cut on it, which was very nice. The ending's a little bit darker than your average movie, and that maybe also leans towards why people were disappointed by the movie. They wanted a big hurrah at the end, where it's not quite that.
No,
it ends the way it should end,
right?
And
yeah,
yeah, it's sort of, if you know John Carpenter and John Carpenter's movies, they're not known for their exciting hurrah ending. Yeah. So
no fairy
yeah,
tales here.
Right.
Actually,
yeah, there's
actually it would be the classic fairy tale where there actually is a moral or like a bad ending or something like that. But there's like a redeeming arc. So actually, I take that back. So actually, this actually is more truer to like true fairy tale, like old school. You know, like
old school. Yeah, where they basically told
consequences.
You, yeah, as a kid, don't take candy from a stranger. Don't go in the woods by yourself. You're going to be dead. Don't go play around with wolves. You're going to end up dead. Right. All of those stories. You're going to die.
You're going to be cut up and you're going to be turned into bread pudding or something like that by the evil witch in the woods, who isn't as you appears. But yeah, again, I think we're rolling up here a little over an hour, but and I'm sure we could keep going. But again, this is just such a damn good John Carpenter flick. You have to give credit where due. And this again, I think we're both in agreement that if this were attempted nowadays, I don't think it would work. I think it would only work on the independent scene. Or, you know, something, if a big studio got behind it, that, well, one, they would never make it. But this is a snapshot in its era and time, and it holds up surprisingly well. 40 years later, you know, it's just crazy.
Yeah, you think back about the classic 80s movies, and, you know, you got your the movies that kind of epitomizes the era. This is very much an 80s movie, and not many people would put it in their top 10 80s movies, but yeah, it's way up there for me. It's one of those movies where I came to love John Carpenter as a horror director. In this movie, I was like, okay, this doesn't seem quite horror, but I watched it and I was like, you know, it's not horror. It's more sci-fi, but gosh darn it, I like it. It's a mix of different things. It kind of, my love for genre is in the mixing and matching of various genres and making it work. This took, you know, sci-fi, horror, satire, humor, action, and kind of made it into a creature all of its own. And this is a very unique movie, tells sort of a kind of a unique tale in a very interesting way, and is successful on all levels. You know, in John Carpenter, he's one of those guys that's all in. He edits, he does the music, he directs. He wrote. He didn't want to be like he did everything, so he put a pseudonym for the writer. But yeah, it's very much John Carpenter's movie. This is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did they talk about why they chose to do the scenes in black and white when they would put the glasses on at all? Did they cover that at all?
They just wanted to be able to differentiate the different worlds and make it a more stark kind of you know, delineation of between the two, so you knew when. Yeah, so contrast. Yeah, kind of contrast. Also, fun fact: this movie got delayed. It was going to be released in October, got delayed to November because they didn't want to compete with Halloween 4, which was and John Carpenter was involved in the first 3 Halloween movies. The 4th one was the first one he was not directly involved with. So it's kind of interesting, yeah, that he was still competing with one of his older titles in that genre. So yeah, that was kind of a fun fact that I saw.
Yeah, again, it's just such a classic, and I'm glad that we could get to it. And we'll continue on that with the next week, with what we're going to be covering next week for sure,
Mhm.
and whatnot. But yeah, do you have anything else to add, or any other aspects you wanted to cover? I think we covered. I think we did pretty good justice. But basically,
Yep.
is the
I
short
think
take is go see this. You will not be disappointed if you have
yeah.
any kind of like if you like horror or action or a blending of those, you won't be disappointed, especially if you
Yeah.
are in our age bracket. Maybe if you're younger, I would be curious to see like how younger generations kind of take this. Um,
I think I think it works because it has
Agreed.
that sarcastic humor. It's when the sarcastic humor is taking a snipe at authority. It's
Right,
all the things that a
authoritarianism. Yeah,
younger a younger person would do. Like I said, I saw it when I was in college. It hit me at the right time, at the right place. It's like you're after high school into college, you start reading and discovering all these different things of maybe the world's not exactly the way they portrayed it when you were in high school.
hmm
That there are bigger questions. There's things that you have to kind of question, and this is one of those movies that spotlights that and shines a light on. And on the subject of questions, Roddy did point out something that was kind of funny in the commentary. He said that he he John Carpenter told him, ask as many questions as you want before the camera rolls. After the camera starts rolling, don't ask me anything.
right,
which was he said smart. Roddy said it was smart because you get all those questions out of the way first, so that
right.
first day on the set, you're feeling confident. Okay, I got this. I don't have any more questions. I got this. So he said that was very good advice that John Carpenter gave him. And the only other funny thing that I had is that when he goes, he was talking about the glasses of, I guess, seeing things. He goes, I still got a pair of those glasses. I take it to the strip club.
That's funny. That's funny.
He goes, no. He goes, I'm a father and have kids, grandkids. That's a joke.
Right, right. That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, very lovable character, Roddy
mhm,
Piper, and his story
mhm.
arc. Just
Yep.
his
Yeah.
life is
Yep.
very interesting too.
Yeah.
Uh,
Left us too soon. Did a great role. I think he was on 2 or 3 episodes of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Did great job on those. Yeah,
yeah,
he should have been able to make. He made a little over, I think, 20 movies. Probably should have been. He's a good actor. He should have been in some maybe better movies. No slight to him. He
no,
probably did what he could, but yeah, I
sure.
think some directors should have taken advantage of his talent.
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah, no, he's a treat to see, and of course, there's if you are connected to wrestling at all, of course, you're gonna get a kick out of that. I don't see that people are gonna have that initial kind of negative feedback like when it was in the movie theaters, but that's kind of how these things grow. Usually, a cult classic wasn't all that well received for some lack of failure or whatever. This was kind of the opposite, like where it actually made money, but
Hmm.
not a tremendous amount. And like you were saying, it was the next week. It was gone. But I'm happy to see that it did make enough to warrant lasting in our subconscious, so to speak, as the stay asleep, the obey, the consume, like these tropes that are very well explored and it all around. This is a reason why you have good directors that have good artistic vision, that make masterpieces like this that stand the test of time. That is just as relevant today as it was back then. Probably even more so today, like in 20 years from now, I'm sure for sure. When we're in our 60s and 70s, who knows? Who knows? But
Oh, and I just noticed. Again, I played a little bit of Saints Row 4. I think I said earlier it was Saints Row 3. It was Saints Row 4 that Keith David has a
oh,
role
okay.
in that video game. And when you were scrolling over Roddy's credits, he's also in Saints Row 4. I know they do a homage to They Live, and maybe we should revisit that game and, and kind of play through it. I know there's a section of that game towards the end that kind of parallels the movie. So yeah, if you're a fan of the movie and the game, make a comment and let us know what we're missing as far as that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be great. They're always looking for to try to keep the video game thing. Of course, I come and go from it. I'm more away from it than I'm in it. But it's always good to have kind of like a purpose for like when you sit down and play a game, you kind of want it to be good. You kind of want I got to have some kind of buy-in or some kind of like a motivation there, I guess, to play. Some video games are just fun to play. But it's also a matter of time too. when I can find time, if I do, then I will. But movies are great with that because you're in and out, and this this goes by pretty quick. This is a strong recommend from our side. I think the only thing we didn't cover. Well, I think IMDb called this was 7.2 out of 10. It's higher than that. This is a no-brainer 8 in my opinion. Maybe a little bit higher if it's a special one to you or nostalgia or whatever, but definitely that's probably where that it's probably in line with reality. Like where, of course, you can never trust these reviews or rating systems anyway, especially if it's an Amazon-owned company. You just never know. But you're probably safer with older movies that are out of the limelight or aren't. There isn't a big marketing budget behind them. Use a little bit of astroturfing that companies have gotten in trouble for, but nobody really bats an eye. It's kind of like accepted. It's kind of like wrestling. Wrestling is fake, so to speak. It doesn't negate the physicality of it at all. You can't be a poor schlub going in there and doing it, but it's kind of like window dressing at this point nowadays, unfortunately, which just goes and ties into this movie that gives commentary on it, like where it's just like ask questions for sure. Ask questions. You might not want to know the answers, but you'll get answers for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think just to defend the wrestling crowd a little bit, yeah, it's fake, but you don't go to a comic book shop and say, "Oh, the comic books are fake."
Right.
Fake. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I don't mean I don't mean to land in on such a negative landing on that because I don't mean that as a commentary on wrestling.
Right.
There are aspects of it that I enjoy periodically, throughout time. I just mean that like the trope of wrestling is whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But you know what? If you're a fan of it, it's real to you, and that's all that matters. It's telling a story. It's kind of like a modern day play, I guess. I guess, or whatever. It's kind of amazing how that still has stood the test of time in and of itself. But I don't mean anything negative or disparaging on wrestling at all. If you're a big fan, I'm just saying in general, like this is kind of like a known thing. But Roddy Piper, growing up as a kiddo, like it ticks the box for me as a young wrestling fan, and ticks the box for side. It pretty much ticks all the boxes for me. And it definitely sounds like you as well, but I think we're
you you weren't alive and breathing in the 80s if you didn't know about the big rumble between Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper, the big brawl between the two. Even though I wasn't a wrestling fan, that was big news to me.
Oh man. Oh well, there's so many fun storylines that kind of came out of that you were kind of hooked as a kid and that you were obviously cheering for, that loosely mirrored reality. But yeah, in his wrestling career, he actually played more of an anti-hero or baddie, that kind of comes around. And of course, these kind of things shifted around, like where Hulk Hogan is the hero. And then he kind of, when he came back to the ring after a couple decades from the 80s and 90s, he kind of came back as a bad guy, which is kind of fun. As it were, Hollywood Hulk. I think he changed his name a little bit, but anyway, it's all good fun. And this movie is good fun. Definitely serious tones, but it's served up in a way that you will enjoy from beginning to end for sure.
And to end this program on a childhood memory that I had, the big matchup between Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper, big news. Well, my next door neighbor decided that me and him were going to fight or whatever. We're best of buddies. We're best of friends. And then he wanted to fight. I think he was going to be Hulk Hogan. I was Roddy Piper. I don't know what.
Sure.
Maybe it was a pretend fight. I don't know what was going on. So we got to scrapping, and I didn't know how to fight. I was throwing things and whatnot, and before I knew it, it was over, and he was running into his house, screaming and crying. Evidently, I guess I probably kicked him in the nether regions, and I guess he decided that whole idea was probably a bad idea to start
This isn't
with.
for me. Never mind.
Yeah. This guy. Yeah. So yeah, there's lots of memories I have tied to this movie and Roddy Piper. So yeah. But yeah, so we had fun. I hope you guys did too.
Absolutely.
We try to do this every week. Some days, some weeks we miss, but hey, if we're there, we hope you'll be there as well.
Yep.
Check out our channel. And if we're off one week, find one of our old videos that you hadn't seen before. Maybe discover a movie that we love and that will become your favorite as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just kind of like as we're leaving the show here, just a shout out to our back catalog. You'll find something. I think we're going to try to end this year strong as we can with some of our selections. It would be very fun, and I think we have maybe a future upcoming collaboration with the one of our friends of the show for sure. Would be great to get into that. Maybe the first of next year's something like that. But yeah, I've been Mike.
And I'm Thomas.
I was going to say one of the tagline. Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, so this has been the They Live, We podcast, John Carpenter's masterpiece. Mike and Tom doing the first, the last, the Nerdom. You see them in the street. You watch them on TV. You might even vote for one this fall. You think they're just people like you. You're wrong. Dead wrong.
We out.